hear me wherever
Loud
you
and clear.
are.
Loud and clear.
And what an honor to be able to connect to my brothers and sisters in the west of our continent. And many of you that might, I understand, are also calling from outside the continent. A big hello to all of you. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I actually met Ike. I don't know whether Ike is here on this call, but I was recently a speaker at a family congress organized by the International Federation for Family Development in Cebu, Philippines. And I met a lot of people from the continent and we exchanged contacts. And I was told a lot of good things about what's going on with Parents First and the great work that is being done with the parents here. And before you know it, I was connected to Sebastian, and Sebastian asked me whether I would be happy to organize a talk session for you. Now, I'll tell you a bit about myself. I've been married for the last 22 years. I have 6 amazing children. Of course, my best part is my wife, my best friend for 22 years. I have 6 children. The eldest is 20 years old, a son, and then I have a daughter who's 18. I have a son who is 16, a daughter who's 13, a daughter who's 9, and then a son who is 6. Actually 7, who's just turned 8. Actually turned 8 the day before yesterday. We just celebrated his birthday. So 3 boys, 3 girls. Um, what I do is professionally, I actually do what is called coaching. I'm an executive coach, a leadership coach. At the same time, I'm also what you'd call I'm a certified emotional, social, and relationship systems intelligence coach. So I work a lot with relationship systems to support them. In this case, relationship systems like families. So right now, I'm very much involved. I work for Strathmore University, which is also very similar to the Lagos Business School or Pan Africa University in Lagos. We have a Strathmore Business School where within that we run programs for family businesses. And I do a lot of support for African family businesses in terms of helping people understand how their interpersonal dynamics affects family governance. I'm mostly specialized in providing coaching to support the individuals understand how they affect each other, how they communicate, how they manage conflict. And then I am always invited for different sessions to speak or in conferences for family. I also speak in schools. I've been involved in a lot of schools developing students and parents. So I'm with people that I'm very familiar with. So the only thing might be different is our accent, but others generally we're just same people struggling in life trying to do something better. And so I'm very excited about this topic. It's one of my most passionate topics. I've noticed that there's an atmosphere that has to be created for people to be able to thrive in whatever system that they're operating in. And that's why I love this topic. I have been training using it. So I'm going to give you just a sneak preview today. My opportunity today is to give you a chance to understand it, see how it affects you as a parent, and hopefully give you some practical tips of how you can develop it. I'm hoping I can be able to sell to you the importance of this particular skill of developing psychological safety and trust. So, Charles, that's a little bit about myself. I hope I've done justice. I'm waiting for you to give me my boss. Let me know when you want me to start. I see we have 72 people on the call already. I'm assuming I can start sharing my screen and proceed. Charles or Sebastian, whoever is around.
Yeah, yes, you can kick off. Remember, you have
All
a
right.
poll.
Okay. So let me begin. The first thing I want to start, ladies and
Run a poll.
gentlemen. All right. Thank you very much. Is what I want to launch right now, the poll. So I want to put a poll on the screen and I'm going to ask you all to try and respond to it. The purpose of this poll is to give me an idea of my audience. You know, before you begin, I always like getting an idea of who's behind this screen. So allow me to launch the first poll, and I am doing so now. You should be able to see it right now. Kindly give me your feedback so that I can get an idea of, it's a bit of just getting to know who you are. Thank you very much. I see responses already coming in. Thank you. Fast and Furious. I like this group. Very responsive. Great. We are at 28%, 30%. The rest of you, keep them coming. Keep the responses coming. I'm impressed at the speed at which they are coming. We're almost at halfway. We're almost halfway. So I'll give another 2 more minutes and then I'll close the poll. So kindly try your very best to respond. We are now at 61%. 50 of you have completed, which is commendable out of the 78. If I get to around 60 something, allow me then to close the poll. I think that would be reflective. That would be a sample reflective of the people that are here. We're at 54. A few of you need to just press a few more buttons to get us to 70%. Now, if you're not able to see the poll, many times it might happen it's the gadget you're using. So it might be a challenge, but I hope the others are able to see it. I think the majority of you have done. I'm now going to close the poll and I'm going to share the results. So I'm going to end the poll now. And then I'd like you to all just have an idea of, I'm going to share the results on the screen. Those of you who've completed, just anybody can unmute and just confirm that you're able to visibly see the results. Just confirm for me. Anyone can unmute and just confirm you can see the results. Sebastian, are you able to see the results on your end? On the screen?
I can see the results.
Yeah. Excellent. Yes. Excellent.
Maybe.
So what I wanted to find out was just generally where the majority of the parents here fall under. I can see a good mix, balanced mix between Gen Y and Gen X. And also, I've noticed that there's a couple of you that a vast number of children. You've also confirmed a majority of you would have the range. There's a few of you, the minority of you have 6 and above, but a good number of you fall between 3 and 5. And then I asked whether you have teenagers. I think the majority of you have teenagers. The reason I asked that is so that to know what to emphasize when I am this sharing. So I've stopped sharing now so that I can now share my screen and proceed. So allow me now to do my presentation briefly and then allow a moment for questions. I'm now sharing my screen and then I'll just ask, I hope everyone just confirm. Charles, I've seen your face on the screen. Confirm you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Your smile is evidence that you can
Yes.
see it. So that it is good to have a face behind the screen so that I can also know that we are all together. So my aim today, good people, is to take you through what a psychological safety and trust is. How do you score? In a short while, I need you to have somewhere to write. So I want to prepare you. If you're somewhere that it's possible for you to have a notebook, or if you're the more advanced generation and you can use your tablet or your just have somewhere where you can complete a short assessment. There's going to be a series of questions coming in a short while, and I need to make sure I prepare you so that you will score yourself, and then those scores will tell us a lot about the extent of psychological safety and trust that is existent in your family. So we'll then also we'll have a moment to look at what are the benefits of having psychological safety and trust, and then a few tips. What as a parent can you do to provide it? What are some practical tips you can do? So before we get into the assessment, this is one of my favorite images. And it tells us a little bit about when people behave or when people make decisions. If you can see where I'm pointing, we only see part of the tree. And so we normally see very little of what happens beneath. Underneath every one of us, our behaviors are shaped by experiences, which those experiences then eventually shape our identity, shape what is important to us, then eventually shapes what we need or what we believe is true, and then it then shapes what emotions we feel. And that is what is rarely seen. So let me give you just an example. I once had a client who was at 52 years, senior executive in an organization. And when she was 7 years old, her dad left their home and went to start another home. So left them with their mother. Now, she didn't know how impactful that leaving of the father would be until when she was 52. At the age of 52, there was a position that came up in the organization that everybody felt she was the best suited for it, but apart from herself. So she had what you call imposter syndrome, or just would always not feel that she's good enough. So when she came for coaching, when she came to me as a coach, coaches normally ask questions. We are paid for asking a few questions, and the client is one who speaks most of the time and eventually comes up with a solution. So in some of my reflective questions, she was very shocked to find out that what had happened to her when she was 7, that experience of her father leaving her had had such a profound impact on her self-esteem, because she found out that when the father left her, she felt there was something wrong with her. She didn't see the father as the problem, but she saw herself as a problem. So what happened to her? She had an experience, which you can see where I'm pointing. That experience shaped her identity. She believed she was not good enough, that there must have been something wrong with her that made her leave. It also affected her attitude and belief towards men, and also towards herself. And then eventually it would trigger certain emotions whenever any topic around this would come up. So she had to work on this to be able to address this. So when you see psychological safety and trust issues, they come from somewhere. If somebody just doesn't have them, they normally have been influenced by experiences. But I'll show you right now before we do the definitions. Please have your pens and paper. On the screen right now are questions to answer. Now, I want you to be very honest with yourself. Don't try and give yourself a score that is not there. You're rating yourself from a score of 1 to 10 on any of the sentences. And you notice each of them is categorized. The 5 questions make the total for category A. The next 5 questions make the totals for category B. What I want you to do is when you look at a sentence, read it, and then rate yourself. If this doesn't apply to you, if this doesn't happen at all in your family, you give yourself a 1. If it is always something that happens in your family, then you give yourself a 10. If it's somewhere in the middle, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, you will probably be at 5 or 6. But that's the way you rate yourself. So give yourself a score for each of the questions on the screen before I move to the next one. So we have 2 sets of questions. There's this one and another one. I'm going to pause right now and unmute myself as I wait for you all to complete the questions. Once you're complete, I will ask if there's anyone still not completed before I move to the next one. So please enjoy this. Be as honest as possible. The more honest you are, the more you'll benefit from my deliberations today. The more you'll find value in the things I'll be sharing. So I'm now muting and giving you a chance to complete. Sebastian, please keep an eye for me on the chat. I'm seeing the chat also had, I think a lot of the questions earlier were more to
Yes.
do with failure
Yes,
to
I'm doing that.
connect. Yeah.
I'm doing that, yeah.
So I'm seeing some people annotating, playing around with the screen. So what we need to do is disable. Are you able to do that?
I'm
There are
looking
people
for it.
who are writing.
Table
There are people who
annotation
are
also.
writing on the screen. Disable annotation. So I've done that. I've disabled
Yeah.
it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry, Charles, you have a question? Charles Ekpe. Charles, I can see your hand up. You have a question about this exercise?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Go ahead, Charles.
I'm somewhat confused. You know, I have a family where I am the child, my parents are there, and I have a family where I'm the father, and my wife and kids are there. So I feel
Good question,
differently in
Charles.
both families. Yeah. So
Good question, Charles.
okay.
The one we are rating is your is your family, the one that you're the parent. That's the
Okay,
one you're
okay.
rating. Thank you so much,
Understood.
Charles, for asking that. Thanks for the clarification. Good question, Charles. So you're rating your own family, the one that you're currently the parent to. So I'm giving another 2 more minutes before we move to the next set. Charles, my good brother, just find out whether there's anyone still completing. Just maybe people can raise their hand if they haven't, they're still completing, so that we can know how much time we can give.
If you're yet to complete, can you just give a thumbs up so that we wait for you? Just give a thumbs up if you're yet to complete. Giving a thumbs up will be faster than typing in the chat box. Okay.
It looks like everyone
Thomas,
has done
I think
it.
we're good.
Yeah, this is a very fast group.
Yeah.
All right.
No,
After
in
you finish
Nigeria,
that,
we are very
Well,
fast and
somebody
effective.
still says not completed.
okay, so we'll wait for them. Somebody has said
Let's
not
wait for a
completed.
few more seconds. Yeah.
All right, no problem. Now, those ones who have completed, make sure you put total. So each of the you'll notice there's total for A. So once you finish those 5 questions, put the totals together and have somewhere where you have that total for A somewhere written, and the same for B. So we are going to have 2 others, and then we will then give you what the results mean in a short while. Sebastian and Charles, do we progress?
I think we should.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
So I'll move to the next one. See, this is the next set of questions. This is a very thought-provoking exercise. It makes you to go internally and really think about what's the situation of your family. And how do you show up? How do you feel whenever you're in that system that is your family, when you're in that system together with the other family members? Honest answers as...
Thomas, can you give
Yes.
the instruction again?
So what you're doing, you're rating each of the sentences. You'll notice there's on the end, there's somewhere it writes your score. So you need to read the sentence, and then you're giving a scoring of 1 to 10. Now, if this sentence doesn't apply at all to your family, for example, the question is, I feel safe to speak up and express my opinion even on controversial issues. If that doesn't happen at all, then you'll give yourself a 1. The lower the score, the less likely that sentence applies to your family. The higher the score, if you have a 10, for example, is a very excellent score. That means that sentence, that issue being asked in the sentence happens all the time, always. So Charles, you promised me that one thing I need to get used to is here people are very fast, which I appreciate.
Yes, we are.
I like that. So let me know whether there's anyone still completing total for C and total for D. Is anyone still who needs some time? Remember to put your total. So what you should have is then you should have 4 totals. Total A, this score. Total B, this score. So you're totaling each section notice has 5 questions. So the score for each of those 5 questions, you total them and you make a total for that section. So you should have 4 totals. And then I'm now ready to take you. We are ready now to dive into psychological safety once you have your scores in front of you. Charles and Sebastian, I'll wait for your guidance. Do I proceed?
I think we should give 30 more seconds.
30 more seconds is what we shall do. Sebastian, thank you.
All right.
All right. Sebastian?
I think we can take off.
Excellent. So I'm hoping everyone, with no exception, that the 100 and something, it's 132 people that are on this call. I'm hoping all of you that are here, wherever you're calling from, you have 4 totals in front of you. So here are the results. This is the scoring card and how it scores. So look at each of the totals you got. Any of the sections that you got below 25, that of course is an area that needs to be worked on, needs very urgent attention. Then you can see the others. 26 to 29 is average, 30 to 39 is good, 40 to 44 is very good. Above 45, you need to be mentoring people. You need to be giving this session to others because it means that you score very high on this. So let me introduce you to what the 4 columns are. I hope you're ready for this moment now. So here are the 4 columns. Column A, these are the 4 quadrants that make up psychological safety. Now, psychological safety is a term that was coined by a Harvard professor called Professor Edmundson. And she's one of my mentors. I read a lot of her work. And she coined this word after working with the Google team. Some of you might have heard of the research that was done with the Google team, which they went to find out what makes a team effective. And they found out the #1 contributor that makes relationship systems effective was actually psychological safety, which is normally referred to as the ease at which members of a system, in this case a family, are willing to take risks jointly or individually without fear of reprimanding, fear of consequences, fear of being punished. And here are the 4 quadrants. 1, if you scored very high on A is the learner safety. It refers to how easy is it in your family for people to try out new things, experiment, not do just the conventional. And I always looking for, it's easy in your family for people to try out new opportunities. And also, more importantly, how easy is it for people to learn from mistakes? Or are people fearful whenever they make mistakes? What is the attitude your family has regarding when somebody makes a mistake? What is the reaction they see from their parent? And therefore, this inhibits the ability of a person to feel like they can learn. Column B is the extent to which the family members find it easy to access each other and collaborate or do things jointly together. Let me make a disclaimer, good people, as I go on. Don't celebrate too quickly when one of your columns scored very high. If another column scored low, please remember that one will affect the other. The 4 are interconnected. Even if you score very well on one, but another scores low, it has an ability to affect the overall quality of psychological safety and trust in your family. So remember, column B is engaging, interacting, mutual collaboration. It is all about being able to foster constructive. People are able to debate and share different opinions, disagree, but respectfully. Now, you'll be able to see why this is of benefit to have this in a family. And because it has an impact, and when I'll be sharing you the benefits, you'll see in a short while. Column C is how easy is it for people in your family to challenge the status quo, to disagree, to speak up. You'll find there are families where people are afraid, even the spouses themselves, between themselves, are afraid to speak up, to say they do not agree with a certain way, or they notice something and are afraid to raise it up. How easy is it for people to express ideas, identify changes, or even expose problems that they're seeing, whether with themselves or others? Then lastly, this word has been misused a lot by the Western world, but for us, inclusion here is referring to the aspects of being able to know that you're valued, to know that people are treated. There's a fairness, there's a level of way that there's no discrimination, that people are treated equally. And even when you're exhibiting punishment, you know, the older children can always tell that you've lost consistency. Maybe you are harsh to the older ones, normally, which is typically what happens. They're the guinea pigs. But then you've lowered your standards of punishment. So people can already start telling that there's discrimination in the way treatment of punishment is dealt with. This is the issue of feeling you can experience ideas, and ideas matter, that even what I share is incorporated in decisions in the family. You remember, the older the children get, the more you realize that your decisions cannot be military or unilateral, but the ability to encompass and make the children feel like they can be part and parcel of decisions within the family is an important quality that falls under inclusion, safety. So it's including others regardless of what level they are in the family, but most importantly, the ability that people feel they can openly contribute. So here is what we are saying. So I hope everyone has looked at their 4 scores, and I hope you're already getting insights. If you scored, I'll return you back again to the scoring, just to remind you again, just to take you back. Remember, this is the scoring sheet. This is what tells you whether you need to pay attention to a certain aspect of the psychological safety that you didn't score well. I just wanted to play it back to you. You can take a screenshot, take a photo of it so that you have it in mind as I carry on. Now, let me introduce you to its definition again so that I can. And this term has become it's very trendy and very modern today, and it's becoming commonly used in all sorts of these relationship systems, whether it's in workplace settings, families, but it's where members feel comfortable to speak up, to share ideas, admit mistakes, and ask questions without fear of embarrassment. But there's a benefit that comes with this, and I'm sure many of you are already seeing it. When people feel safe enough to be themselves, when people feel safe enough to challenge, safe enough to respectfully challenge. Remember, we're in Africa. We're not talking about here being like the European world where children can just speak as they want. No, we're talking about being able to respectfully challenge and differ and even ask. Maybe not necessarily say, I don't agree, but maybe ask a question so that you can get clarification. Now, the thing you have to remember is that there are benefits that come with it. Families that foster psychological safety are able to innovate more. The ideas for moving forward or solving problems in the family don't reside with only one member. Different members feel open enough to share ideas. People are able to communicate better. I know you had a session on communication, but the bedrock of communication, what makes communication successful in a family, is how much people feel safe to be themselves, to be authentic. And the family is able to achieve higher levels of performance. But if they don't have psychological safety, they struggle with mistrust, poor collaboration, and stagnation. These are other benefits: open communication, mutual respect, a supportive environment where people can take risks. And even risk taking is encouraged and mistakes are viewed as learning opportunities. Can you imagine a home where people know how and are skilled enough to know how to manage conflicts, to know how to disagree openly but respectfully, leading to different and new ways of dealing with solving those conflicts? This is what psychological safety does to a family. It creates bright and cheerful homes where the environment then becomes conducive enough for people to be themselves, to show up authentically, to reach out to each other, bring out the best in each other. And I'll show you the other benefits that come with it. Remember, everyone feels they have a voice, and this shared confidence enables collective success. Here is some other benefits of psychological safety and trust in a family. I work in a university. I see the products of the education system. And you can always tell a child who's come from a home where there's psychological safety, there's a way they carry themselves. They're confident to even ask questions in class. They're very sure of themselves. And it's the opposite. Whenever people grow up in a house where there's fear, intimidation, punitive measures for you being able to make a mistake, where people are afraid to speak up, where people are afraid to tell the truth, even when they've made a mistake, to say, you know what, I lied, I did something wrong. This is the highest test of psychological safety. The impact is self-esteem. People show up in their true self. And this has huge benefits health-wise, and the ability to get opportunities once your children come out of school and move into universities and workplace. The bedrock of creating psychological safety is those formative years when people are with you, when your children are with you in the early ages while they're at home. Now, this is another benefit. Your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship you have. If you have toxic energy, negative energy within you, you will express the same to people around you. As a parent, you will notice when you're demonstrating lack of patience with your children, or you threaten or use fear to get results, many times if you look back, you'll notice that if you look at your family of origin, that's probably what you saw as the reality of how things were done. And therefore, you need to be aware that you need to fix yourself if you're going to be able to fix the relationship with your children. Now, the hope I have for all of you is that it's never too late. Even if you've made mistakes in the past and you're looking at your children now and wondering, I wish I'd known a lot of these things, I would have been a bit better with my older children. Now I realize they don't want anything to do with me. They don't want to be around my environment. And simply because I was autocratic, I was a dictator, and I never allowed space for people to feel safe enough to voice what was theirs. But the good news I have for you, it's always possible to start afresh. And I'll give you a few tips as we come to it. So as I wind up, we talk about these intelligences, and they're very important in the family setting. It's the beginning. Parents need to have emotional intelligence, and that is the ability to identify and express and skillfully leverage on emotions. Parents that are good in psychological safety are parents who are aware of when their emotions are being triggered. You know, there are certain children who trigger you, or certain situations that trigger you. Emotional intelligence is being able to be aware of what situations trigger you and being able to know how to postpone your reaction to an incident and being able instead to respond instead of reacting. But also a second important intelligence for parents is the ability to grow in social intelligence. That is to empathize with another's experience. Great parenting is being able to be in the shoes of your children, to see the world from their view and to understand that which they are fearing or that which they find, how they see the world from their side. But more importantly, is to be aware that the sum is bigger than the individual parts, and that's the relationship system. Understanding that the family is part of a bigger system and the individual voices form something larger than the individual parts. And yet every voice within the family member is valued and valid and needs to be considered that way. And therefore, when anybody speaks and shares an opinion within your family, it shouldn't be seen as that's so-and-so's voice. No, it's seen as belonging to the entire relationship system, which is the family. That is a higher level of intelligence, much higher than emotional intelligence, much higher than social intelligence. And it's one that can be developed. One can grow in these intelligences even as a parent. As I conclude, before I open for questions now, is just to remind you, again, just what I've said. Relationship system intelligence is the ability to capacity to see oneself as part of a relationship system. It enhances the ability to identify with and collaborate with groups. So a family is interdependent entities that have a common identity or a function. And that's why we call a family a relationship system. And it's very important. I think Charles, who had asked the question earlier, I'm glad you asked that question when you're answering the assessment, is because the families of origin have had a big impact on who you show up as a parent. Your challenges with psychological safety might probably have come from what you saw in your homes and the experiences you had that have shaped. The first place to begin the healing is to be cognizant of your own blind spots that come from the realities that you were exposed to based on the experiences of your own families of origin. I'll skip this and give you some tips as we close. Here are some ways to grow psychological safety. First, you start with yourself. You have to be aware that you're broken, that you yourself need your own help before you start trying to fix the rest of the family members. Look it's being aware of your own triggers, being conscious of what triggers you, what makes you respond in reactive manners, and being cognizant of that. That's an incredible awareness of intelligence. Secondly, is the two of you as a couple have to model it. You have to model the psychological safety. The children's first security is in seeing the commitment and the trust that exists between the father and the mother. That's what is the biggest contributor of psychological safety and trust. People think it's trying to get them to read books or do other things external. No. When they see the father and the mother are truly, genuinely interested in each other and committed to each other, that provides them a level of safety, a level of self-esteem. Then setting certain family rules, avoiding things like bullying, laughing at each other when people are commenting, making sure that your dinner times are opportunities where people feel free enough to share ideas, using those times to be opportunities for people to express what was your highlight today, what was the thing that made you happy, what was the thing that made you sad, and without anyone being no consequences. And also, how do you test that your family is growing in psychological safety? That people make mistakes and are quick to admit it and learn from it. Celebrate where you've done well. In the 4 columns, if you scored highly, celebrate for those moments where you've done things well. But I'm also hoping you'll list down 1 or 2 things that you notice you don't do very well. One of the 4 safeties that you probably realize is an area of growth for you. And therefore, that is where you narrow down on building that particular area. Openly talk about this subject. All right? I did an exercise before I came here with my children. I gave them an opportunity to complete this assessment. It was very interesting to see how each of my children sees psychological safety from different points of views. So personality types will also determine whether a child feels psychologically safe. The more extroverted children are more vocal, will speak up. Your more introverted children will probably need you to approach them individually to find out how safe they feel within the family. It's an important thing to ask this. Read, get a mentor, seek any help in case you find out that this is not an area that is strong in you. And finally, good people, pray. There's nothing that defeats prayer. My time is up, Charles. I'm aware I've exhausted my 40 minutes. I want to take it back to the audience and to hear whether there are any questions. I'll stop sharing.
Wow, brilliant. That was crisp. You
Thank you,
started
Charles.
with still searching mission, and then you got our attention, and boom, you threw in the concepts. All right, so let's have your comments and your questions. You may wish to just indicate by raising up your hand, and then you speak. Ngozi, yes, we hear you.
Charles, also let them know that I'm happy to share the slides. I've seen somebody has asked whether they can get a copy. I'm very happy to share the slides with anyone. And I'll also have my contacts here in case somebody might want to reach out and ask me more particular and personal questions regarding their family.
Okay, great. All right, so your comments, your questions, just indicate by raising up your hand and you can speak. Okay, there's a raised hand. Yeah. So Olubumi, you have the floor. Olubumi, just unmute. If you're speaking, we're not hearing you. You need to unmute and speak. Okay, okay, good.
Yes, thank you. I'm on now. Thank you. It was not allowing me to unmute. Thank you very much, sir. And I'm very grateful for this privilege. I'll go straight to my point. Thomas, is an enlightening presentation you have given, and it is very practical and sacrosanct to our daily living. I'm excited by what you have said. Now, I have 3 children, and I think I'm right in the middle of the demographic profile that you asked us to present. I have the challenges of parenting, obviously, and can really reason with what you have said. But there are 2 things that I'm interested in putting in the middle of what you have said, which I'm not able to sit it down comfortably. And the 2 things are these. I understand fully well about the need to have children, how do I say it now, express themselves in the family. And I think I'm learning from my teenage children a lot every day that they need to be able to disagree with me. They need to be able to disagree with me. And I've learned the hard way. So now I'm asking about the values. As a family, one of the things we give to our children is values. where do we place the place of values? Getting a child to know exactly what the family expects of that child, as in, these are the values we have in the family. How do we place it in this place? Especially because a smart and intelligent child will always want to oppose at one point in time that these things are not comfortable, they are not realistic. I don't think I need to follow them. So where do we place the values, for the family in that? Then the second thing is the fact that I have come to realize that my children have a right to disagree with me. I don't like it, but when I go with that formula, I see that they get to participate more. Thank you very much.
And well said. Do I respond to each, Charles?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Go ahead.
I think that's a very good question, and really I can connect with the Olobunmi in that very much, because as a fellow parent, let me just also say this, that when it comes to values, it's very important as a family that you think of yourself just like any company. I always say, my wife and I always do directors retreat. It's one of our favorite things we do at the beginning of the year. We look at ourselves as directors of a company, and one of the things we do is to go out and try and craft our strategy for the year. What's our mission? What's our vision? That always remains the same. What are our values? Now, the brother who just asked me the question, please note, the older the children get, those values have to be co-created with your older children. When your children now in the teenagers, you now pass the age of now telling them these are the values of the family, but you now involve them to see, okay, these are the values we've held. What do you guys think? Is there any values we should include? Should we improve? Should we change? And when you make them co-creators, then they become owners of the same values. And that way you also reduce the tension that you face with your teenagers by making them also participate in the development and the improvement of the values of the family. The younger they are, of course, at that age, is always keeping them visible. I'm one person who always believes that put the values in a place that they're also visible for the family to keep referring to it. But my brother, I hope I've answered your question on the values. I hope I have done justice to it.
Yeah, that was quite straight to the point. So we have Felix Odudu. Felix Odudu, please.
Okay.
And
after that, Francis, you'll be next. So Felix.
Francis has a question. Yes, yeah.
Thank you so much. And today, I think I've learned new things. And in the course of your presentation, because I'm not used to some of these things before, it's like I was getting confused. Because why? In my growing up, there are cultures that, for instance, when our parents are talking to us, we must not look into their face. And then sometimes when there are visitors come, you must leave for those visitors. So that kind of thing, sometimes I want to enforce them, on my children, especially when I'm giving some directives. So I would not want them to challenge me. I see it as a kind of being rude if they do that to me. But today now, with this presentation, I think for me, it's a new things. So my question is that where can I really start from now, and how do I go about and also progress it, and so that I can revise some of these things?
Felix, that's a very good question. I was actually, Charles, expecting that question should come from this audience. Let me just say something. Remember, even when we share this concept, each of you family members listening, each of the families listening to me today, remember to take these things in context. All right? They will not apply in totality in every home. So look at your culture, look at your personal dynamics. I think there's somebody we need to mute their mic, Charles. There's some echo in the background. Sebastian, are you able to control the mic? There's a mic that has an echo.
I think it's muted now. It's muted now. Okay.
So Felix, good question. So what I was sharing with Felix, and I think his question will be of benefit to other people. Remember, contextualize the topic of psychological safety to your own specific dynamics. It will not apply the same way for the Mundia's family as it will apply for you. So what I always say, Felix, when it's new to you, like you've discovered today, don't take it holistically. It's almost like eating food that you've never eaten before or wholesome. You're likely to have digestive problems. What I would ask you to do is just take them in small bits. Go back to your home and ask yourself, what are the things that could be applicable and where could they apply in our culture? Sit down with your spouse, because there's a lot of wisdom when the two of you share this, because you both see it differently. And then secondly, remember, we do not want to remove the African values or cultures that made our societies what they are. So this in no way replaces those traditional values that made our families what they are. But what you always need to keep asking yourself, Felix, and the rest of us, is there times when we need to revise that and ask ourselves, are we dealing with an audience of children that we are using mechanics that are for the olden time that might not be applicable to a newer generation? Or is there still a same way of still enforcing the same values that we grew up with, but using new ways that are more responsive and more appropriate for the ages of our children? That's all I would say, Felix. But remember, contextualize it, and remember, it doesn't apply the same for everyone. Take it in small bits. Felix, I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, so we'll move on to Francis Wandike. Francis, please. Francis, just unmute your mic and speak. Okay, Francis. Who else is going next? Francis, you're invited to speak.
There's Ngozi Ekweme there.
Yes, Ngozi, good. Ngozi, I know you said
Good evening,
it's a wonderful session.
everyone.
Yeah, but yes, yeah, you okay, good.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, for the wonderful presentation. So recently I've been in some parenting class where we were taught that parenting is all about us as parents, not just our children. And we see that we have daily stressors that trigger us, either from work or either from being overwhelmed with family activities. And we have this battle of trying to parent right. So my question is, and again, we parents, some of our attitude towards our children are the way we are trained. Maybe from different family dynamics and the way we like shouting. Some of us were raised being shouted on, and now we want to parent right. But at times we see ourselves still doing those things. So how actually can we heal? Aside being more consistent and just intentional about it, at times you come back from work, you want to get the kids to do some things. And again, you see yourself shifting from shouting. Maybe that day you didn't want to shout and you plan not to shout, but you still see yourself falling back to those ways you're parenting, you have been parented with. So how do we actually heal from all those maybe childhood traumas and all sorts? Thank you.
A very good question. I love the quality of questions. The poema, very good question. First, let me begin by saying, when I got married, my wife also is from a very different upbringing. So you have two people coming into marriage. Both of them have been exposed to different realities, and all of us carry our own baggage, which is from the past. First thing I want to tell you, Ekweme, is please give yourself grace. Give yourself some love. What do I mean? These things don't change overnight. And the first thing that is most important, the fact that you're already aware of this is already half the battle. What I would be very concerned about is a parent who is constantly spreading their negative energy to their children and is not even aware that they are actually the source of it. So I'm happy to note, Ekweme, for you, you're really in advanced stages, that you're already conscious of it. Secondly, there are certain things you need to look out for. There are stages where you actually might need some specialized help. And this is where, for example, it is to the point where it becomes abusive, or physical abuse to children. Then you're reaching to a stage where you might actually consider getting specialized help for it. Thirdly, use the support system of your spouse. Hold each other accountable. Become each other's accountability partner. One of the things my wife does for me is that she's learned not to correct me in public. So sometimes I can have an outburst at a child, and then I realize I was wrong, but I've already, it's spilled out there. She will not disagree with me in public, which is a very wise thing for parents to do, because part of causing psychological harm is when they can see two of you are not pulling together. So when she sees me not doing the right thing, she would pull me on the side later and speak very kindly and very gracefully and point out that thing came out. So challenge each other to hold each other accountable. Say, you know what, my husband, I realize my area is I keep spilling or I keep having outbursts. Next time you see me do it, please let's create a sign that you can give me to know that maybe I need to cool down, but just avoid any public reprimanding of each other. But the good news I have for you is that everything can change. Awareness is the beginning part. Then start reading more about this topic. Thirdly, start associating yourself with people who are already making efforts to grow in this area as parents. Forgive yourself. It's very important that you forgive yourself. If you have access to spiritual help, you can get access to somebody who can give you some spiritual direction on this matter. Let it be a subject matter. Get some specialized help. And that's what I would give you as a summary. I hope that helps. Ekweme.
Wow. Yes. Okay, so please let's have your hand up, but we have okay.
Yes, Francis online now.
Oh, Francis, you finally showed up.
Yes, it was not it was muted. That's why.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about that, Francis. Sorry.
All right. Good evening, the facilitator. I am really wowed by your presentation. I've not seen it from this direction, before now, and I'm very, very hopeful that I will start putting these things to practice. But then I want to ask two questions. Number one, I want to go straight to the point. At what point do you maintain discipline? Since you said we should be open to communication from our children. Because of course, children will always be children. Like the Bible said that foolishness is in the heart of a child. So, and sometimes they say things out of context. At what point do you strike a balance? I want to know in that area. And then number two, I work with boys. And of course, you can relate that boys are full of energy. They want to explore. They want to bring down the roof, as it were. Now, my question is, how can I relate more calmly with boys that are full of energy? Thank you very much.
Francis, on the second one, I'll pray for you. I have boys in my house. I know what you're referring to. One of the things I'll say, and just to reiterate, Francis, let us let boys be boys, let girls be girls. This thing of trying to doctor our boys to be less aggressive is something that is going to cause a lot of harm to them. We can teach them how to channel their power. That's what we need to be helping our boys to learn. So you don't need to be at less calm when you're speaking to them. What I can tell you is actually celebrate this energy, this aggressiveness, this competition that is characteristic of boys. What you need to do is just give them guidelines. It's like a soccer pitch. I'm a big fan of the Super Eagles. It's like the soccer field on which we play on. All you need to do is just create the boundaries on which they can be allowed to be themselves. So psychological safety is also letting boys to be authentic and to be themselves and not trying to turn them to be something else that they are not, because that has harm in the long term. On your second question of balancing and maintaining discipline, this is what I always say, because you raised something very interesting. Some children might want to, in their communication, maybe not get it right or might be rude. This is where you teach them. I always say, parents, you'll be amazed at how much power you have to first be to mirror the appropriate way of communication, but also at the same time to teach your children how to communicate. When a child errs and makes a mistake, pull that child on the side and just have a conversation, respecting their privacy. That what, in that incident that happened, what could have been a different way of you communicating that? And there is a teaching moment. And then also add other skills for them, so that next time, if that child is also in the same similar situation of communication and you want to maintain discipline, have them refer to the agreed ground rules that you set in the last conversation. Remember what we spoke about. To what extent are you following on the guidelines that I gave you in the past? It's all teaching, my brother. Remember, never give up. Keep teaching. Keep mirroring it. Our children will keep making mistakes, but more importantly, love them. Be affectionate to them and be graceful. I think somebody in the chat had mentioned Emilia, that I think Emilia said something very beautiful. To this point, you can also ask pardon when you have overreacted. Just like parents need to ask pardon to each other, also we need to ask pardon from our children. It is not weakness to admit that you made a mistake. And this is part of being able to create that discipline. When the children see that you're strong enough that to admit that you've made a mistake, and that doesn't remove your authority, you're already creating the atmosphere for that.
All right. Emeka, you're next.
Okay. Thank you, Charles.
Good.
Yes, thank you, Charles. Thank you, Thomas. You are highly animated. It has been a rendezvous of lecture here. We thank you. There was something you mentioned, which is an obvious fact earlier in your lecture, in the talk. You talked about the abuse of the privilege, the freedom parents offer and the society offer to the Western children, that they have started abusing it. And I am worried that in civilized communities like Western world, like you mentioned, and children are not enlightened enough to appreciate the freedom they are receiving to the extent that they go ahead to abuse it. Do you not foresee some threats in the social structure in Nigeria, in the less developed world like ours, that by the time this freedom level we are aspiring to give to our children, are you not worried that the abuse would be more scandalous, more damaging than in the Western world, which we are experiencing? Thank you very much. And then how do we forestall it? How do we forestall it? That's the most important thing. How do we go about forestalling it?
Emeka, that's such an intellectual question, very philosophical. I could actually spend 2 or 3 hours having this discourse with you. I'll give you some highlight opinions,
Okay.
just to respond, Emeka. One is that there's a mistaken notion of what freedom is. Many people consider freedom as license to do whatever you want. And it's a mistaken notion you're seeing a lot in the Western world. So children are growing up believing that anything they feel or any whims that they experience, they can respond to it. And this for us is what we need to watch out for. So I think one of the things, Emeka, we need to watch out for, because how do these things come to us? Our biggest enemies lie in social media. Our biggest enemies lies through our education system. So you as a parent has to be constantly alert to what your children are listening to, what they're watching. And one of the things we can't forget is what makes us African is first we are, because our identity is communal. We are external, it's outside in. My identity is linked to my communal connections. In the Western world, it's the other way around. I dictate what I want of the world. Therefore, then I set the reality of what is external. A very dangerous place to go. Emeka might give you just comfort that what cushions Africa right now, at least most of us who are in this part, is that we still have our family social support system still intact, which then provide us many stopgaps and many checks and balances that the Western world is not privy to. But what I would advise you as a parent is to keep your eye very much alert on the impact of social media, because the notions of mistaken notions of freedom are permeating our society slowly through music, through movies, through social media. And therefore, we need to be more active. And therefore, maybe what I would ask, Emeka, we can all do is to start being more active together, championing the values that are African, that make our families stable. That's, Emeka, my brief summation. I would have loved to say more, but because of time, allow me just to say up to there. But thank you for your thoughts. Brilliant thoughts.
All right, great. So, Tiger, you're next. Tiger, unmute.
As we wait for them to unmute.
For you, but meanwhile,
all right,
we
thank you. Good evening.
Say, yeah.
Can you hear me now? I wasn't
okay.
allowed to unmute.
We can.
On. Okay.
Okay.
So my question goes as thus is, for me is I really need to, I want to know how to also navigate outside, in the sense that it's also, we can do all the work inside the house, in the families. What happens when our kids go to school? I'm speaking a bit from, well, let's say personal experience, much younger. You have everyone in the house, trying to, create an enabling environment for the family. But you go out, you meet the bullies, You meet those ones who will talk down on you. You will meet the teachers who would openly tell you that you're no good. Then you go back home. What next? I want to know how to protect at this point, because we can do so much. What then do we do? How then do we? I mean, we cannot, close off outside completely, the external environment. Well, how do we control and then make sure that these things, that they are meeting outside are not affecting them negatively?
Very good question. I see the name you use there. I don't know whether, what name would I refer you by? I've seen you're going by Tiger, so I don't know whether.
Well,
I don't know which name I can refer him, but anyway, let me respond to the speaker.
Yeah.
And I think he's raised a very pertinent issue. My simple answer to this is the following. One, let's remember that you need to only focus your energies on what you have control or ability to influence, and that's your immediate family. And the reality is true, what you've mentioned, is that these people will eventually come out and face an external world. But your job as a parent is just simply to do your very best. Make sure that you model these characters, these virtues in your home. But then also be realistic to start speaking to them that, my children, the world out there is not like our home. So that you also can manage the expectations that when they go out, they're not shocked to find that people are not subscribing to the same values that they hold in their house. That's one way of beginning to prepare the reality check. Secondly, with some of the institutions, you might have some limited ability to influence. And therefore, where a red flag is raised of people who are not exhibiting psychological safety outside, and it's an institution and it's affecting your family, if you're able to do something, you can do that. But my brother, all I can tell you, because I share your concern and worry, is that what I always keep telling myself, let me do my best as a parent. And every day to pray for my children, because the reality is I cannot change the schools out there. I cannot change the government. I cannot change social media, but I can educate my children and make it more deliberate and intentional to prepare them for the reality that they're going to. Don't educate your children for a world that doesn't exist. Be very progressive in your thinking, remembering that you can't parent your children for a world that existed in your time. You need to be aware that they are going to face much more. Therefore, the more you need to be fully involved. But remember, lastly, your affection and love for your children can never, ever replace anything else. These children, so that even when they go out and they face the challenges out there, they know there is always a place that they can find safety and trust to come to recuperate, to get themselves back, to mend their pieces together. But remember, my last words, focus on only what you can be able to control and influence. And that's do your part and pray. And the rest, leave it. Don't panic.
All right. Great. Talking about our time, there's a question here on how do you deal with addiction to social media?
As I said, Charles, some of these topics that are coming would require another session. So I'm cognizant that I don't want to. I might not do justice to some of this lovely question, and I really want to thank all the participants for the amazing questions they put there. All I can tell you is that remember, I always tell parents this: you be the first model of how you use social media gadgets. Let the children see you in the home showing temperance, ability to have self-control when it comes to this. How's your relation to social media and games? You see, you're the first. Once the children realize that you come home and you're able to put the phone away and fully focus on really interested in them, you're already building in them the right habits towards how to deal. But once addictions are there, all I always say is when addiction is there, love that child. Remember to separate the person from the action. You have only an issue with the actions, but you love that child. Hug that child, love them, tell them many times that you love them, and demonstrate it by all the safety tips I've given you in this session. Don't judge them, don't pigeonhole them, but treat them equally as you treat any other child. And then more importantly, I would advise, get help. I work in a university where we send children to psychologists or for therapy for such things. Do not underestimate the influence of addiction to social media. because eventually, if this is not weaned out early, it becomes an issue for them. So that's the gaps I would give you. But remember, the home still remains the perfect place where a child feels accepted for who they are, even if they have those addictions. And that's the first healing. It's the most important healing towards getting that child moving forward.
Good. So we'll take the last question. Chidalu, shoot, so that we can call it a day.
Hey,
Chidalu. Yeah.
thank you very much, everyone. Good evening, everyone. So apparently I'm just joining the meeting. I got the link late. So I just want to ask a quick question. I don't know if it's in context to what was discussed, but how do I strike a balance between not spoiling my children and giving them what is necessary to boost their confidence? So take, for instance, I have a daughter that's in boarding school. She just started boarding school in September. And every time she comes home for midterm or for the holiday, she tells me, oh, my friends, they have Stanley Cups, they have this, they have that. I can deprive her from those things because most times they're not necessary. But how do I also strike that balance just to make sure that I don't, diminish her confidence when she's with her mates, and just give her like the right feeling and the right boost of confidence in school, because we can actually afford those things, but we just feel like we don't have to give it to her if they are not necessary. But at the same time, she needs to be confident in class that, oh yes, I have this, I have that. So I don't know if you understand where I'm coming from, but that's my question. Thank you.
Wow, Charles, really good questions. Again, I'm just noticing because of the limited time I have, I don't know to what justice I can do this, but I think that's a very pertinent question raised. And I think it's linked to a question that was asked earlier. So I spoke earlier about the importance of being able to be clear of this is what is the, you see, a family, it's very important. Our family is very clear of who are we? What's our identity? What makes us our families? Because then you start moving away from, but the so and so is having it. Why can't we have it? You move away from those arguments when you're very clear about your identity. And the older the children are, you want to make sure that you incorporate their input into that identity of the family. Secondly, the older the children get, you also need to give a bit of allowances. Now, we are trusting that if you've done your work and put the groundwork on teaching them habits of how to be self-controlled with some of these things, you can start releasing them in small bits. In my house, I have a policy. Phones are only accessible to my children once they hit 18. Now, nobody complains about it because it's a rule that we all agreed, and we even have a whole list of ground rules of how we use gadgets in our house, but co-created with my older children. So that's what I would say, so that she doesn't feel like it's you clamping down and being archaic or being a dinosaur. It's good to let her know that I mean well when I make these rules. Always remind your children, you're just there for their good. And although there'll be times you might make mistakes, we will make allowances and we'll work with it together. Give small allowances, give a child some bit of responsibility, see how they respond. Congratulate them when they do well with that responsibility and add them more responsibility so that they realize that they earn those things. They're not just a given. It's not a right. It's not a privilege, because you want to move away from children having the privilege mentality, which then becomes very dangerous. I hope I've responded to that question. There was something about aside couples accountable. Can we involve our children to hold us accountable? Oh yes, absolutely yes. And it's even a lot of fun if you get the children, but you need to teach them then also how to point out when you make a mistake, because you don't want your child then making it a public specter in front of the rest. But the older they are, definitely. In my house, the older they are, the more teenagers, the older teenagers I involve them. We have one-on-one call. We have every day set aside for each of the children. And when we meet them in those meetings, my wife and I meet each child one-on-one. In those meetings, we'd ask them, son, is there anything I can do better? Is there anything I can improve to make you feel more psychologically safe in the house? Is there anything that you need to bring to my attention that maybe I need to address? The older ones, you can do that. The younger ones might not be able to conceptualize. So for sure, include them. And then somebody had asked, how can parents transcend the I don't want my children to go through what I went through? This is so common. This is common. And I can assure you, that mentality again is coming from a bias. You remember, you as a parent have a reality lens through which you're seeing the world. So for some reason, you think that the world you went through was either too bad that you don't want your children to go through. Remember, it's a bias. It's a prejudice you hold regarding something. But remember, even as you make that decision of what you don't want your children to go through, remember, you don't compromise. You don't want to present to them wants instead of needs. This is where you educate your children to ensure that in not exempting them from the world that you had in the past, that you're not setting them up for more trouble. You're not creating soft individuals that don't have the character to be able to withstand pressure, simply because they're given to anything they want. The bike breaks, you buy them a new one, instead of making sure that they repair it. The phone, they've not utilized all the applications, and you want to get them the other one. What are you teaching them? Lack of temperance, lack of self-mastery. They will then pay those consequences. And it is no wonder you'll find them finding it hard to overcome the temptations of social media or peer pressure. So my warning is, be careful as you say that statement. Qualify it and ensure that those things that you're avoiding are actual things that were bad, but you're improving and giving them virtues, characters that will prepare them for life. Charles, I realize in my part here in the world, it's very late, and my main stakeholders have been wondering where I am.
Charles?
But a big thank you to all the questions, all of you. I wish I can remember all your names. My heart is so warm with gratitude for the level of questions, the interaction, and I'm hoping it's been of value, and that I hope you have left with something. Charles, if you allow me, I can put my slide of my contacts. Somebody had asked me for my contacts, my handle.
We will share slides. Okay, okay, good.
So I've also displayed it on the screen. Those who might want, I must tell you, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So if you want to join me on LinkedIn, send me a message and remind me that you met me through the Parents First event. I will accept it. And then that's my phone number. I'm on WhatsApp on that.
Okay.
But that's where you'll find me normally active. All right.
Yes.
Back to you, Charles. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thomas, yes, we are letting you go because we don't want you to go. But we'll let you go because we are going to get you back on stage before the year ends, because that is just unanimous. All the messages I'm saying here is that, Thomas, you're not done yet. So thank you so much. You wowed us, and then we're quite impressed at the brevity with which you just pushed your points, and then the way you stirred us to reflect on our own level of trust, and we thought that, man, we need to listen to you. So thank you very